Hey folks, Randy Newberg here with another episode of Leupold's Hunt Talk Radio from snowy, blizzardy Bozeman, Montana this morning. May 17th, I believe. We're supposed to be bear hunting, but it's a complete whiteout. So I have the production crew here, and I said if we're going to do something today, it looks like it's going to be indoors. And so we're doing a podcast. We've been talking about this podcast for quite a while. We've made a call for questions and ideas from the audience on Facebook, on YouTube, on our Hunt Talk forum, on Instagram, all of our platforms. And Marcus has went through all these comments, and he's got sheets of questions people have for us. So I think we got a lot. We got a lot. So I don't know how long this is going to take, but
I don't think we're going to get through all of them.
And also with us in the podcast in the past, you have heard that we put out a call last winter for a WPA Wilderness Production Assistant, and Michael got I guess you were either, would we say selected, or you were the last man standing, or the misfortunate one who wasn't smart enough to decline?
Ooh, I'd say I'm just the lucky one who got it.
Okay. So Michael joined us earlier this month, and he is the WPA man of many languages world traveler, our local hockey player, all kinds of things. His background is whitetail hunting, so it's an interesting mix.
It is. The whole hiking thing is been kind of kicking my butt, but I'm starting to get my mountain legs. Actually, it was really the mountain lungs that have needed the most developing. But
yeah, you just can't replace altitude.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know how you can do it. I guess there's some machines you can train on that are altitude machines or whatever, but I felt bad for you looking back saying, oh man, he's saying, where's the oxygen out here?
Yeah, coming from, I think it was 600 feet above sea level in Columbus, Ohio, where it's flat as a pancake, to, 6,000 and above. It's been quite the adventure.
Yeah. Well, we're glad to have you. So,
well, I'm glad to be here.
Anyhow, folks, what we're going to do, we're going to go through this list of questions, and it is, I don't know how we could tie any common thread through it all, other than these are viewer-listener questions.
I think it's going to be pretty random. I didn't put them in any specific order. It's just kind of questions.
But before we get started, we want to thank Leupold for being the title sponsor of this podcast and our TV show and everything else we do. Leupold is a great company, very committed to conservation, very committed to the self-guided public land hunter that is our audience, and just great products. If you're interested in any type of optics, go to leupold.com and as they say, get you some. Also, Onyx Maps. You guys hear me say it all the time. I wouldn't leave home without it. The hunts that we do, even this bear hunt this week, has been, kind of this boundary area of some public and private, and Onyx Maps just makes that so much easier. And if you are interested in buying their products, use promo code Randy, and when you purchase any of the app products for your smartphone, by using the promo code Randy, you're going to get a really nice discount. And they're a great company. Big supporters in what we do and big supporters of conservation. The other, GoHunt.com, their insider program. It's why I'm sitting right now on an Arizona elk tag, a Wyoming elk tag. Marcus has a Wyoming elk tag. And we're about to find out in the next few weeks about Utah, Nevada, a whole bunch of others. And even after the tag drawings, if you haven't drawn the quote-unquote tag you want, they have a lot of information out there, especially in the over-the-counter states like Colorado and such, that can give you a lot of good information. So if you go to gohunt.com/insider, and again, we're making this easy, use promo code Randy, you get a $50 Sportsman's Warehouse gift card. And then Orion coolers, you heard Damon Bungard and Clay Hayes were on the last podcast. Damon is kind of the mastermind behind Orion coolers, and he came to me and said, Randy, your audience is perfect for what we do. We think our coolers are perfect for them. And I would say he was absolutely correct. We've got a bunch of YouTube videos out there that we've shot about how we use them, how to keep your animals from spoiling, how to keep ice for long periods of time. Go to orioncoolers.com. And again, promo code Randy, and you're going to be getting yourself a really cool tumbler that has the Hunt Talk logo on it. So with that, we're about ready to dive into things here and see how it goes. If you guys hear a bunch of stuff that gets screwed up, it's because I'm on dog detail today. And Marcus and Michael are looking at me like, what in the heck? Why are we on dog detail trying to do a podcast? But anyhow, that's what we're trying to do. I just hit the pause button, and we might have lost the whole first part of the podcast. So let's just get into it. And if I got to record this beginning part again, we'll record it again.
Sounds good.
So what do we got? What's our first question? Marcus is reading the questions. Michael is pointing to some of them on the page, and I'm not sure what they're going to be, but I'm going to try my best.
All right. So first up, we have, what is your fitness program in preparation for a hunt?
Oh, we were talking about this, last night or 2 nights ago when we were up on the mountain bear hunting?
I think every night.
So if you don't listen to the Gritty Bowman podcast, you should. But those guys, Brian and Aaron and them, they're really into this fitness stuff. And I was looking on my phone, Brian, I don't have your cell phone number, but I was trying to find you because I was going to call you and say, hey, Brian, I know you guys were up in Alaska and you shot a bear, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to shoot a bear today because I just ate a Dairy Queen. And no, we got on the discussion about how much hunting is fitness and how much it's just mental and determination and experience. And
definitely both.
It is. And for me, I drive a desk for a living. I'm a CPA. I've got a bum liver, so I'm on a screwed up diet, and I have certain other restrictions where I'm never going to be a gym rat. And I don't want people to think that you have to be absolute gym rat 5 hours a day in the gym to be an elk hunter because, well, I was going to say because I'm an elk hunter and I'm not in the gym 5 hours a day, but some people would say, yeah, but Newberg, you're a half-assed elk hunter, so better not answer it that way. But there's no doubt the better shape you're in, the more fun you're going to have, especially in the higher mountain hunts. It just is the way it is. And so to that question of what do I do? For me, it's all about just replicating what elk hunting is. That's hiking mountains with weight on my back, uphill, downhill, side hill, varying the pace. I think we're talking about it on our way home yesterday. I said, I make it an appointment on my calendar every day that I'm going to hike. I just say, all right, at 4:00, I'm checking out. I'm going hiking for 2.5 hours. Because if I don't, I'll find something else to do. And I always try to make it as easy for me to go and do it as possible. I think if you make it complicated, if it's far from work, if you try to schedule it at complicated times of the day, there's all these reasons why you won't go do it. But I don't lift weights. I got a bum shoulder and a bum wrist, so I'm not a weightlifting kind of guy. For me, it's hiking. I don't know, Marcus, you're getting ready to do some marathon. What is it called?
It's the Headwaters Relay. It's
you and a group of
6. Hopefully we'll find a 7th person to join us.
And what is it, 300 miles?
230 some miles.
In the mountains.
Yeah, you go over like 3 mountain ranges, I think. It's a relay race, so you don't actually have to run 230 miles. You get a trade-off every now and then.
Right, yeah. But is that kind of what you do for packing all these cameras and everything around?
Yeah, I mean, I try to run. I mean, now that it's summer, I'll probably try to hike a lot more. Yeah. But in the winter and stuff, when the trails are all iced up, I kind kind of run in the mornings sometimes, or sometimes I don't, and then I get fat, and then I have to start running again or doing something.
Yeah, and
I'm not perfect at
Michael's over there
fit.
looking at you like, if you think this boy from Ohio is running 300 miles,
I was just about to say, don't ask me to be that seventh person.
We'll give you the downhill legs.
But I don't know. You think about the muscles that you use elk hunting, and to me, it's my back, it's my core, it's my legs. It's a little bit of everything, but that solid, strong core. When you're bending under a tree limb, or you're trying to sneak quietly side hill, or you're carrying a load, I don't know how you replicate that in the gym.
Yeah, that's hard. Although I was just thinking, though, as a follow-up question, I would imagine a lot of people who might live in a big city say, well, I can't get to a trailhead every day. Like, how do I replicate a hunting scenario?
Yeah,
Stairs.
That's a good point.
That's what I did when I was in Ohio. I would go to the local dam, and I would walk up the stair, run up and down the stairs, and then it would turn into a walk.
Start as a run, turn into a walk.
But doing stairs, that seems like something that would help me at least. Or
that's a good point, Marcus, because I think I and lots of us take for granted that our world is everyone else's world. But if I lived in Chicago or wherever it might be, and it's a 3-hour drive to anywhere to get away from people, I'd probably be a gym rat. It'd probably be my only option.
Yeah.
I guess my point is, though, I don't want people to think that you have to be some sort of triathlete, winner of every Spartan race to be an elk hunter. No doubt it's going to help. The better shape you're in, the better your endurance, the less pain and discomfort you're going to have. But don't let that discourage you from hunting. That would be my answer. I mean, look at me. I'm 52 years old. I'm built like a weeble. I mean, I wobble, but I don't fall down. The old weeble commercial. I'm never gonna be a lean, mean mountain machine.
You get up the mountains, though.
Yeah,
definitely. Especially when you get those trekking poles going. Get that four leg action with the trekking poles, and
that helps me a ton. I mean, without trekking poles at this point in my life, being 52, it'd be hard. And trekking poles just save on my knees and ankles, and that, to me, I view, if you're a mountain hunter, your knees and your ankles and your legs, that's your drivetrain. You got to take care of that. You can't let that go. And so that's why with the trekking poles, I'm just off and going.
Yeah, especially with heavy loads, like downhill heavy loads. That's when I really like to use trekking poles.
Yeah, I get a lot of people say, well, how are you going to, what if you jump something? How are you going to take a quick shot? Well, first of all, for TV, we don't, that's not going to happen. Like the bear that popped out yesterday.
Yeah, exactly.
I know a lot of people would have, when they see that footage, they're going to be like, well, why didn't you shoot? Well, first of all, we got to see, in this case, is it one we want to shoot? In other words, a boar, not a sow. It's running. I'm not going to take a running shot at it. My rifle is strapped to my Mystery Ranch pack, so it's not super accessible. So a lot of people look at the way I walk through the woods and they're like, oh, I'd never do that. I want to have my rifle at the ready. Well, I get that. That's fine. But we can't, how long does it take to get the camera powered up and get a focus?
It all depends. I mean, like yesterday I was walking, I had the camera on just in case that scenario happened. So I was actually able to get on the bear pretty quick.
Right.
But yeah, if you have the camera off or we're lagging behind because we're doing some artsy shot or something, then that's the scenario when you can't get on very quick.
Very seldom is it going to happen where you guys can get the camera up on sticks, get it powered on, get everything checked and focused that I don't have my rifle ready. And the reason I get into that is a lot of people say, well, I'm not doing trekking poles because I want to have my rifle right there. And that's fine. It's not how we hunt. The way we have to hunt for TV, I think, has made me a better hunter. We have to we do a lot of spotting, a lot of glassing. People comment, man, all you ever do is you're glassing. Well, yeah, for TV, you want to get some footage of that animal from afar, and then you want to talk about, here's our strategy, and then you want to kind of present, here's how we're going in on it. And I've found that forcing us to do that for the sake of TV has made us more effective. Versus otherwise, what do? You get bored and you start, well, I got to walk around the mountain. I got to walk through the timber. I've never killed an elk walking through the timber. I don't know. Maybe people do, but I never have.
I think they do, but I think I've only killed one elk walking through the timber. So
yeah. So that's kind of some tangents to the whole idea. And I can't remember where I was at when someone asked me about the mental aspects of the whole rigors, the physical rigors and the pushing through the pain. And that's something that's gotten easier every year for me. As my physical talent, if you want to say that I even had any, has declined, my mental fortitude to just ignore and put everything out of my mind has increased. And to me, that's a lot of it. There are just going to be days when it's miserable because it's cold or it's super hot or the loads are so heavy or the brush. And being able to mentally accept that as, that's just part of my job and go through it has made it way, way easier.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, there's one thing to being in physical shape, but even if you're in tip-top shape and you just have a bad mind or don't have a good thought on what you're doing, it's just you're going to be in a negative place and you're not going to be able to do the hunt.
Yeah, I think the mind can overcome the body more than the body can overcome the mind.
Yeah. But that being said, you can't just, wing it without being in physical shape.
Right. I would not suggest anybody come here from Daytona Beach, Florida, right on sea level, be 60 pounds overweight, get off the airplane and think you're going to climb up to 10,000 feet with a heavy load. You're probably going to die of a heart attack or get altitude sickness or something else. So, I mean, I answered that question knowing that, or hoping everybody understands you got to have some basic levels of fitness.
Yeah. And then there was actually a second part to that question about wanting to know about diet and nutrition.
Diet and nutrition. I'm the wrong guy to ask that because I've got this thing called... it's a liver issue caused by blood clots. I had a huge blood clot in the portal system that goes into my liver. So it screwed up all the plumbing in my liver. I get about 30% of the blood flow through my liver that gets cleansed as the rest of the world does. And so I'm, of all people, to be on a low-protein diet. I am on a low-protein diet. I'm allowed 40 grams of protein a day. And... those of you who understand nutrition and like 40, how do you keep how do you keep going when you're exerting yourself? Because in high exertion times, average size male will be over 200 grams of protein easily. So I don't know that I should be the guy who answers the diet question. But the general reply being the quality of what you put in your body is a function of how well your body's going to perform. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. And that's why people see on our YouTube channel, we do a lot of home cooked meals that my wife, Kim, she cooks. We freeze and take with us because with my body, I can only do processed and, high salt, high sodium foods for so long. I can't process lactic acids like everybody else. I can't process the sodiums, the ammonias, a whole lot of other stuff. So for me, the quality of the food is super important.
Yeah, I think just cutting out processed foods right there, and it would increase your nutrition dramatically.
Yeah, you know what? Everybody should go and watch this video. It's called Super Size Me. Did you have to watch it in high school?
I watched it in film school.
Okay. Did you see it, Michael?
Yep, we had to watch it.
I hadn't seen it. And my son here at Bozeman High, for their health and PE class, they made everybody watch it. And I thought that was so remarkable where this guy went through, 30 days of eating junk food or fast food?
It was McDonald's for 30 days straight.
And at the end, they told him, you got to quit. We're afraid you're going to die.
Yeah.
But in there was all these really good anecdotes about just simple nutritional things that I think America has become so bad at. That, what is it, one soda pop a day over the course of a year adds 12 pounds of weight to the body that you otherwise have to get rid of. It just talks about all these basic things that if anyone wants to start the basics of better nutrition, go watch that video, Super Size Me, wasn't it? Isn't that what it was called?
Yep, that's what it's called.
We did have to critique that film and find all the things that were wrong with it.
Oh, really? In film school?
I don't remember. There were some flaws in the way that film was produced, but other than that, it does send a very good message.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think the last time that I drank a carbonated beverage. It's been so long. If I'm gonna take in fluids, then it's not going to be lactose or what do they call it? High fructose corn syrup. It's just so I look at the way some people take care of their bodies, and it's like, well, I guess that's why the outcome is what it is. Back to that point that you said, the better the quality of food, just basic nutrition while you're out in the field is gonna do a ton for you.
Yep.
Basic nutrition is not a Snicker bar for lunch, for breakfast, for dinner.
Although I've done that hunting.
I always have a Snicker bar with me, but it's not my mainstay. Let's put it that way.
All right, should we jump to the next one?
Yeah. What else we got?
All right. Well, we'll jump right into glassing. So when you're glassing, how do you pick apart the landscape? Do you have a strategy in mind?
Lots of strategies. And this gets back to the idea that when you've been hunting for years and years, and I sound really old when I say it this way, but I got my hunter ed certificate 40 years ago, and I was tagging along with family members 5 or 6 years before that. So I take for granted a lot of the things that I do that I've learned over time. And Michael from Ohio, I'm sure binoculars and spotting scopes weren't a big deal back there.
Oh, not at all.
Yeah.
Never looked through a spotting scope until the other day, actually, to tell the truth.
So it just is how you hunt. I mean, differences in how and where you hunt. For me, as a general rule, I'm going to pick it apart with my binos first. Yep. If I see something, then I'm going to my spotter. I'm going to look at the close areas first and eventually move away. Very first thing I'm going to do a quick scan with my naked eye of anything look kind of out of place. Like this is what is that there? My naked eye will pick that up quicker than binos just because of the field of view. Then I'm going to go to binos and I'm going to do all the close stuff. I'm going to grid it, and I hear people say, "Oh, I like to do my grids horizontally. I like to do my grids vertically." I don't know that it really matters. For me, I like to put my binos on a tripod of some sort, or on sometimes I have my spotter on the tripod and I'm just resting my binos on top of the spotter. And so I will move, I'll glass a field of view, I'll hold steady, and I'll use my eyes to go all the way around the field of view of the binos. Then I will move the tripod slightly over to the next spot, or up or down to the next spot, sometimes I grid horizontally, sometimes I grid vertically. I can't say I have any. I feel
like it depends on the landscape, because sometimes it just lends itself to doing one versus the other.
Yeah, like doing, some of those areas where you have avalanche chutes and stuff, I just find myself doing it vertically.
Yeah.
When I'm out antelope hunting in big, vast expanses, I see myself doing it horizontally.
Yeah.
So I don't know that answers what the person's question is, but the reason I always look close first is that animal that's close may already know you're there.
Yep.
And your time frame of being able to have a chance, I guess, or you see them before they see you, is a lot less with the animal that's 200 yards away versus the animal that's a mile away. Mm-hmm. That animal a mile away, he's going to be there. So I'm in no huge hurry to have to find that one. But the one that's close, I better find him as quick as I'm there.
Yeah, I think I do it very similarly. But I like to just look at the landscape and see if there's any spots that look like there's like that looks like a good meadow. Or
Yeah.
And then I just like quickly look in all those first, and then I start gridding.
Yeah. And, we talk a lot about how to find elk in post-rut and late season sanctuary places. So when I'm out on a big point and I've got 8 or 10 places that could be potential sanctuaries, I'm looking at every little spot. I might move 400 yards and just absolutely tear that apart with the binos. Then I might drop down 250 yards and tear that place apart. I'm not sitting on a rock and glassing the entire view shed because I know those other places aren't sanctuary spots, or they're just huge, vast tracts of timber. I'm not going to sit there and glass vast tracts of dark timber from afar.
Yeah.
I'm not going to see anything. I'm going to glass edges. I'm going to glass brush. I'm going to glass broken terrain where places where an elk or a deer is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And then one thing I just thought of too that I'm sure you do as well, but just like while you're gridding, occasionally you just stop and just hold steady on one spot, and that way that's when you pick out movement versus if you're like continually moving.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, that's what I find beautiful about putting your binoculars on a tripod.
Yep.
Is it forces you to stop and do just what you said, Marcus, glass, and just stop the movement and pick everything apart. So
that's good to transition into what would be your specific reasons for choosing 10 by 42, 8 by 42, 12 by 50, 15 by 56 binoculars.
Yeah. There's a lot of answers to that. It depends on where I'm glassing. I prefer 8 power just because you get a wider field of view. And usually I have a spotter, so I don't need to rely on the bino to tell me to pick something apart with my bino. Leupold sent me those new 15 by 56s that I've been using this week bear hunting. Mm-hmm. And, I can see for long glassing sessions, especially things like bear hunting, the Coos deer hunters in Arizona, I think, invented the idea of the 15 by 56. Mm-hmm. You get such a huge field of view, and it's like having 2 spotting scopes at a low power setting. And boy, you can really, with that large objective lens, you don't lose a lot of light. And the image is crisp and all the way to the edge. And when you do, and obviously you use them on a tripod, when you're sitting there, it takes you quite a while to examine that entire field of view before you have to move up or down or sideways. I don't know. I guess it's up to each person. Right now, I have a pair of 10 powers as my main binos. I jumped up from an 8 to 10. I bounce back and forth. One thing I find about the 10 powers is if I'm huffing and puffing or my heart's beating, it doesn't take much wiggle or trimmer to make it a little bit harder to use them effectively.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think everybody has a different idea about it, but
yeah, I would imagine. I mean, it depends on the landscape you're in. Again,
type of hunting you do.
Type of hunting.
Yeah. For archery hunting, I want the 8 powers for sure. For rifle hunting, maybe 10 power. It really comes down to what each person wants and how they use a bino. If I didn't carry a spotter, for sure I would want a 10 power. Just that extra 2x of magnification is sometimes makes enough of a difference, but I'm not going without a spotter. One of the 3 of us always has a spotter. This week we've had 2 spotters.
Yep.
And back to the point of, I am the only TV show I know of that gives the cameramen credit when they spot something. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, I know that in these other shows, the camera guys spot a lot of stuff. That's why I like having camera guys that are hunters. And so if I say, hey, we're going to go chase this elk that Tyler saw or that Marcus saw or Michael or whoever, guess what, folks? That's how it happened. I'm not going to BS the viewer that, oh, well, I saw this one, and yeah. Really? Give me a break. Oh, well. Sorry for a tangent there.
All right, should we jump into the next one?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so have you, or how would you handle coming across public property that's marked as private? Have you had any experience with this? Or how would you, I guess, if you did?
If you hunt in the West, you're going to come across public property that has private boundary markers on it. It just is a function of how fences used to be done. There used to be what's called fencing for convenience. In other words, you're allowed to deviate from property lines because it's just too hard to fence around that cliff or up that cliff or whatever. Sometimes you get people who, I'd like to think it was all out of, just a mistake or ignorance of, gee, I didn't know. But sometimes it's just, well, let's post this and see what happens. Now with Onyx maps, it gives me a very high level of confidence of where I'm at. And if I see something that's posted, I'm usually going to ask an authority, a law enforcement person, hey, what's the deal here? Why is that posted? Kind of the reverse of that is true too. We were hunting in Wyoming one year, and there was this little 40-acre section of BLM, and there were elk crossing there. It was so crazy. You wouldn't think 40 acres in elk hunting, but it was just in this critical spot. It wasn't marked. It wasn't anything other than on my Onyx map. So we park along the county road, and it touches the county road for about, a 10-yard window. The county road goes through this diagonal piece, and there's a little pull-off there. So we pull off, walk out, and we're looking down. These elk are moving back and forth between public and private. And here comes a vehicle driving up there in a hurry. And I tell the camera crew, I'm like, hold on, guys, I know what this is going to be. And the guy gets out, and yes, he's the ranch manager, the adjacent ranch. And I'm thinking, oh, no. And he said, he was very polite, actually. He's like, what you boys doing? We're elk hunting. Really? You know where you're at? Yep. Right here on a little piece of BLM land. He's like, really? You think this is BLM, huh? I'm like, yeah. And I showed him the Onyx map. He's like, what is that? I said, well, this is a surface map that shows everything. And we talked for a little while. He's like, I've been the manager here for, I can't remember what he said, 20, 25 years. And he said, this would be news to me. And he says, I'll be back. And he left. I'm like, oh, he's going to call the sheriff. This is going to get uncomfortable. About 2 hours later, he comes back and he says, hey, I just want you to know, you're right. This is BLM land. He said, I went and pulled up all of the whatever he had for maps or whatever the property. He said, I've been managing this forever. And I always thought that the only BLM here was that landlocked stuff we had north of us here. He said, knock yourself out, right? And he said, right there's you can see those boundaries right there. And so he was really good about it. And he actually apologized. He said, I hope I didn't mess up your hunt or anything. He said, if an elk comes out on this 40 acres, tip them over.
That's cool. I mean, I don't think all landowners are going to react that way, in my experience.
Right. The next day we are there, and here comes the game warden. It's almost like a repeat of the same thing. What are you guys doing? Oh, we're hunting here. Oh, where's so-and-so? You guys with, he thought we were with whoever is leasing the private land. And we're like, no, we're on BLM land. He's like, huh? And so I showed him the thing. He's like, well, I'll be. He said, you know how many times people drive by this section and look at those elk right down there? And I've never heard of anyone shooting on here. So, but point of that is kind of an offshoot of what do you do? I mean, it's going to happen. Sometimes it's just accidental. Unfortunately, I would say more times than not, it's intentional. And you just have to call people. I mean, there's a place where we fly in where the boundary was way off. And I took the aerial images, I took the cadastral images, I took images of where we were at, the entire trail of everything, where I walked the fence line, and there was a serious encroachment on the BLM that has since been fixed. I sent it all to the BLM manager, and it was a pretty big blow up about that property. The fact that that line was way off, inconveniently way off. Inconvenient if you're a public land elk hunter. Convenient that it happened to be way off in the main thoroughfare that the elk use to go from private to public. So,
yeah,
I hear that has since been corrected. So, I hope so.
Next question.
Did you run into a lot of that back east, Michael?
Not really. We didn't have as much public in Ohio as we do out here, but no, not too much problems there.
Probably all been settled a long time ago.
Yeah, exactly. I'd say it definitely got settled a long time ago.
Yeah. So, anyhow, you ever run into it?
I have. Yeah. And I talked to the landowner and like, you can call the game warden or whatever and deal with them. But I've never had too much of an issue. The landowner might get a little mad, but.
And the other kind of fluky thing to that is a lot of the state trust lands, not BLM land, not Forest Service land, but state trust land in the West. That's land held by the state land boards, and we've went into big dissertations about how those are different. A lot of those, the lessee is allowed to post it as no trespassing, but your state land permit or your hunting license exempts you from that trespassing rule if you are hunting. So it's...
Yeah. Well, and then it wasn't super long ago where they used to have they could prohibit public use, right?
In Montana.
And so I think some of those old landowners kind of still have that in their mind. They're like, they just don't want to give that up even.
Right. And in Colorado, they can post it because in Colorado, you can't hunt state trust land. That's how it used to be in Montana until the mid-90s when that all changed. Now, if you have your state land permit, you can go and hunt state land even if it says no trespassing. If it's state land, it's no trespassing for everything other than those who have a recreation permit. So it's
kind of funky.
Oh, it is. You almost, the old saying, you need to be a Philadelphia lawyer to understand the rules. Well, in some respects, the public access rules in the West require a lot of thought and research.
It's a lot different out east too, because a lot of the guys are tree stand hunting, so it's not like you're really walking around
that's
trying to find these boundaries. You're really just trying to get as deep as you can in a public spot to find your big old buck or your big tom strutting.
That's great input, because so often you always think that your world is the world everyone else has. Here in the West, we're moving a lot. We're glassing and moving. Moving. Whereas tree stand hunting, I can see. When you said that, Mike, I'm like, oh, yeah, it probably isn't as big of a deal back there.
Yeah. At least in my experience, it hasn't been.
Yeah.
At my previous job, we hunted a lot of public, and we never really had any issues with any landowners. So,
all right. Should we jump into the next one?
Yep. Right. We are solving all the world's problems here, man. We are moving right along.
So what do you do when you encounter another person hunting the same piece of public land that you are? How do you treat that situation?
Happens every hunt. Mm-hmm. Remember?
It happened the other day.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I tell Marcus and Michael, I'm like, man, we're going to see bears in here. There's this spotting. This rock goes way out there. You can glass, I don't know how many square miles. Well, we get there and there's a truck parked there. I'm like, they'll never go out to that rock. Well, they were there.
Yep.
They were there before we were. So I walk up to them. I'm like, hey, guys, dang. You beat me to this spot, but it's yours. And the one guy's like, are you the guy who does the TV show? Yeah, I am. He's like, and we talked. And So they were there first. So it's theirs. You
don't tell them how important you are and that you deserve to be there.
No. I think there's kind of an ethos of how we should behave on public land. For me, it's whoever is there first gets it. If I can't get the mattress off my back in the morning, that's my problem. If someone else got up early and got there before me, or hiked in at noon to be there for the evening hunt before me, guess what? Move on, Randy. And that's what we did the other night. It was a fun discussion with those guys because I've hunted that spot so much. And they're like, well, you ever see any bears here? Oh, yeah. You see that chute over there? And this road right down here. And so it's, I don't know. If you're hunting public land, you just got to accept that's going to be part of the drill. And, we've had instances on public land where people come and set up right beside us or right in front of us. And they've pulled the old BS of, well, it's public land. You know what? I get that. And if they do that, every time I've pulled up and left, I just, to me, having to be near people with that attitude, it's not worth the confrontation. So I just move on. But it happens. So anyone who hunts public land and thinks that's never going to happen, I got some bad news for you. It's just going to be part of the drill.
Yep.
So.
All right. We got another question of what happens to your meat and hides when you have back-to-back hunts?
You mean the ones we don't eat before we go to the next hunt?
Well, I imagine they're probably thinking right. How do you keep the meat good? Yeah. How do you keep the hides good while you're going on concurrent hunts?
Yeah, then that's always a little bit of a depends. If I can, I try to schedule it so that I'm going to back up even further. My favorite part of hunting, and you've seen this out in the field, Marcus, the guttin and gillin, I live for that. When we have a guest hunter, if they shoot something, I'm almost offering them money if they'll let me do the field dressing and the carving and the guttin and gillin. I can't explain why, but that's one of my favorite things. And before I started the TV show, bringing the animal home and processing it myself was always just one of I can't explain why I enjoy it so much, but I do. But now that it's to this viewer's question is, what about back to back to back? So many times we're on a hunt that we're doing 3 hunts on one road trip. And in that instance, I try to find, okay, is there a processor nearby that's trustworthy, that has a good reputation that I can leave it with? Maybe when we're done with the next hunt or the next 2 hunts, I'll pick it up on my way home. And we always carry coolers and ice for that occasion. Very often, that's not the case. So if we have a friend nearby or a guest hunter or whoever, many times I've signed those transfer certificates that says I hereby transfer this meat to this person. And end up having to do it. There's a place in Colorado. These 2 brothers are such cool guys. So if people see where we hunt elk in Colorado, and this gets to kind of the question there, the only people I see who climb up this cliff to these benches are these 2 brothers, and they only hunt cows. So when I'm up there, even though they're Colorado residents, I live in Montana. It's like every year that I'm hunting there, it's like every other year I get down there, I bump into them. And I could tell the first couple of years, they're like, oh, he's going to tell the whole world where this is. I haven't told anybody. But one year I shot a bull, and we were going from there to Wyoming. So I run into the one brother as we're walking out. I'm like, oh, man, sorry to screw up your hunt in here. Dang, I didn't know you were in here this morning because we're packing loads of meat. And he's like, oh, don't worry about it. It's getting warm. I was going back to get some lunch. And I said, well, you guys had any elk? No, it's been a tough year. I haven't filled their tags yet. You want this one? And he looked, his word was, well, I can't take a man's elk. I said, no, if you want it, I'll gladly give it to you because we're going from here to Wyoming, and for me to backtrack and get the meat and everything is a challenge. So it took some coaxing. He actually brought his brother down to when we brought the last loads out. Him and his brother are at the trailhead, and his brother's like, "Are you sure you'd give away an elk?" Yep, I would in this instance. So we ended up giving it to them. Last year in Colorado, remember how hot it was when we packed that bull out? And it had already hung in the hills for 2 days. We had to, it was going to be hot on that long drive home to Montana. So I had a really good friend who lived in Grand Junction, and I called him, and he's like, well, my freezer's doing pretty good, but my mom's isn't. And so we gave it to his mom. So preference is I'd rather keep it, obviously, because that's a big part of why I hunt. But when you're doing these hunts, sometimes I have to donate it. And I know that may not be what the viewer's question is. For me, if, say I was going on a road trip that had 2 hunts, and I wasn't doing this TV gig, I would be bringing my Orion coolers. I'd have the trailer filled with Orion coolers. And I would do everything I could to keep that meat and get it home. We did that YouTube video about how we did that. We did the one about how we did it in New Mexico last year when it was so hot, and then about the one YouTube video of how we just have 1 or 2 coolers that are nothing but frozen milk jugs. We never open them. That is what's going to keep that meat for the way home. So I don't know if that answers it.
No, I think that was good.
Okay. And again, it's just so dependent upon the time of year that, in November, I'm way less worried about it than I am in September. I'll skid a critter along with me for 5 or 6 days versus in September, I want to get that thing in a freezer. I want to get that thing hung in a locker somewhere. So.
All right. So we have another question of a lot of your how-to content on YouTube caters to examples of 5-day or more, 5 days or longer hunts.
Yeah.
And they are saying that they're a weekend warrior hunter.
Right.
And they're wondering if you've ever been a weekend warrior hunter and if you have any tips.
Yeah.
That would be specific to that kind of hunting.
Until I started, even before the TV show, I was lucky enough that the tip would be become a CPA, because you're going to get all your work done from January through April 15th. And then you got a really flexible schedule in the hunting season. And my wife always says, you wouldn't have become a CPA if tax season was in the fall, would you? You're right, honey. I would not under any circumstance. But that's not necessarily a tip that can be implemented. That decision in the road was way back there. So, yeah, I was a weekend warrior, though, even in the CPA world. There were times when I just, I worked the normal long days, Monday through Friday, everyone else does. It is harder on public land. What I found is I would go, and this is just applicable to elk hunting, not just to elk hunting, but how I did it in elk hunting. I realized that if I could leave work on Friday and go sleep at the trailhead, I would be way more rested on Saturday morning. Wake up at the trailhead and walk in the dark versus, okay, when you're around the house, you got the TV going, you're distracted by 14 things, you don't get to sleep until 10:30 at night, and you got to get up at 3 a.m. to drive to the trailhead and hike far enough. The other thing was I knew that on Saturday morning, that was my best chance because the animals had Monday through Friday where the pressure had lightened up some. And they were going to start moving back to places that are a little more comfortable, that were a little higher risk. So Saturday morning, I was looking for them in different places than I would have been Sunday afternoon. And whether that's deer or elk or whatever, it was kind of the same strategy that I used, is knowing where most of that when most of that pressure is going to be and where it pushed the animals, and try to adjust my hunting plan according to that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Getting to the trailhead on Friday night, that definitely helps. Just to rather than having to try to drive in the morning.
Yeah, I don't know. I just found it way more effective. Sorry for the barking in the background. I'm on dog detail, and She's watching the snow fall out there. I don't know. That dog, she's 14 years old. She's deaf as a post. But if something walks by, like a vehicle drives by the front window, it must cast a shadow or something, and she thinks, and she'll bark for just this random, no reason at all. So, sorry, folks, we'll have to deal with a little bit of a cockapoo barking once in a while here. So,
do you think that for those weekend warriors that like preseason scouting's pretty important? I know that out east, scouting before the season's so important for whitetails and stuff like that, but how does that kind of go?
I think it's important if you're the weekend warrior guy. What I would try to do, and this gets back to some of the things I often talk about, is for elk hunting, and again, so many of our answers end up being related to elk hunting because I think that's where a lot of the questions come from, our elk hunters, is I try to take the Friday, I would try to take if season open on Saturday, I'd try to take Friday off. And this was because a lot of times I couldn't get there and scout, or elk are changing their behaviors quite rapidly in the fall as opposed to whitetails. So they're going from pre-rut, peak rut to post-rut in a quick arch. So if I'm trying to scout elk in September for a late October hunt, they're going to be in completely different places. So I try to do my scouting way closer to when season opens, when it's elk. So I would try to go down if I could. If I was going to take one day of vacation, it was going to be the Friday before season, not Monday, the third day of season.
Yeah.
Just because if I could go and I could scout and I could get on the hill and I could find that bull that night, I could kill him the next morning before all hell broke loose. Yep. So I always have my opening day strategy and then the rest of season strategy. So to your point, Michael, yeah, I think scouting would be a big help. But if you are going to do that scouting, what I would do is try to move my scouting period closer to the hunting date when it comes to elk. So
gotcha.
So
all right. Should we jump into the next question?
I would say we should, Marcus, before this dog gets out of hand here.
All right.
I think she wants a Dairy Queen.
Oh, yeah? Is that like a daily occurrence for her?
Kind of about 5:30. She gets the Dairy Queen kind of quiver. Because she knows when we go to Dairy Queen, she gets one of those little Vitabone dog treats.
They'll actually give you a little puppy cone.
They will. Yeah, but she's got such a sensitive stomach. If she has a puppy cone, we got problems for a while. So, not that the listener needs to hear that. They're probably like, Newberg, you got the stupidest things on your podcast. Well, we've been through. Would we make it through the first page now out of 4 or 5 pages?
I started to highlight a few of them. We can go back and ask some of the other questions.
The good news is, Marcus, it looks to me like we've got about 2 years worth of podcast questions here.
I'm guessing. I mean, I don't know how long we're going to go, but so here's one that. What would be the best first hunt for an adult onset hunter? Big game hunt is what they specified. So.
Big game hunt. Boy. I guess that would depend on where they're coming from or where they live. I would say if you live near white-tailed deer would be a great starting point. If you're a traveling hunter, I would say if you're thinking first Western big game hunt, no doubt antelope. Wyoming antelope is, if you're thinking of starting the Western hunting gig, I can't think of a better kind of introduction or gateway drug, whatever you want to call it, than pronghorn in Wyoming. The weather's good. You're going to see lots of animals. They taste unbelievably just fantastic food, table fare. It's going to create some of the same challenges you have with all other Western game. By that, I mean dealing with glassing, dealing with property boundaries, because the West is this kind of checkerboard pattern, this mix of this is public, that's private. You have to kind of go through some of the same elaborate drawing schemes to draw an antelope tag that you do for elk and deer, so you get familiar with how those systems work. I don't know. If the question is based on what's the first Western big game, I'd say pronghorn and probably in Wyoming. If it's just any hunting in general, go find a white-tailed doe in your backyard or in your neighborhood or in your county.
Yeah.
I mean, what was your first?
Well, my first thought.
You grew up here.
But so I think in like a very localized Southwest Montana scenario, I would almost say a mule deer hunt.
Right.
Just it's like if you just shoot a small mule deer buck, they're so dumb you can hunt them in the rut. You can just you can spook them and they're gonna run and they're gonna stop another 100 yards later and stuff. But that's just like very localized thought of Southwest Montana and their general tags. You can buy them and you can hunt them in the rut.
Right. But and I'm sure in Ohio, Michael, all the white-tailed does you could probably handle.
Oh yeah, I actually started hunting in our family friend's backyard. No joke. It was seriously their backyard. It was about 12 acres, and there were so many does walking through there. There's actually some really nice bucks going through there, too, and it's just right outside of the city boundaries or whatever. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, you'd be surprised at the amount of whitetails that walk through there.
Yeah. And for me, when someone says that, I'm thinking of all of the skills, all the hurdles you're trying to climb through experience. How to field dress one? What do I do when I get one on the ground? How do I get it home? Once I get it home, how do I take care of it? Now I got some meat. How do I experiment with how to cook it? And so to me, just having success that first time is you are covering a lot of ground of learning by being successful with a white-tailed doe, as you are a big bull elk. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a function of degrees, and it's far more amplified with a big bull elk versus up on the big mountain than it is a white-tailed doe, and you're like you were saying, Michael, in the neighbor's backyard. But I would just say whatever's most convenient to you if you're an adult onset hunter.
Yeah, I don't think in any scenario though it would probably be a bull elk.
I don't know. I would say
had some really good private access.
That's a good point.
You get a big bull screaming in your face the first time.
Yeah, or just a public land bull elk it's a tough hurdle, especially let's say in Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, where there's general tags. Colorado, it's tough sledding. You're setting yourself up for frustration.
And that's I say that, and that's the first thing that I took my wife on for her first day of hunting was going after a bull elk. So I totally disregarded my own recommendation.
Do as I say, not as I do. Huh?
Yeah, and it did not work out. So since then, she's became very good hunter.
Right, yeah. You guys fill your elk tags the first weekend every year here in Montana with a bow.
Well, no, that happened once.
Oh, well, it happened last year, so.
So it happens every year.
Well, usually it takes us till rifle season. But.
Okay, well, last year you guys were on top of it.
Yep.
I think you're right with the antelope, though, because don't they kind of hang out in the lower country, and it's not as much...
Right. Yeah, it's not it doesn't require that you be a triathlete, that's for sure.
Yeah, I guess I've never hunted antelope in Wyoming, but to me, the shying away from Montana antelope is a lot of the hunts that I've experienced, like opening day mayhem, and it's just like antelope running everywhere, people are driving everywhere, and it's like, to me, that I would not want to take someone for their first hunt to experience that type of hunting. Right. But that being said, that's another localized scenario in Southwest Montana of kind of just not a good scenario.
If you've been here for opening day of antelope in Montana, it's kind of crazy. That would not be the experience I would want people to have as an idea of their first Western hunt. For whatever reason, big game opener of deer and elk in Montana is way more sane than opening day of antelope, it seems like.
Yeah, it's just, I think so much of the antelope country is roaded. Right. And so
they're so visible.
If you can find a spot that you can get away from the roads, it's definitely worthwhile. But it gets hectic on that opening day scenario when it's a heavily roaded area and they give out 300 tags or whatever for that district.
Yeah, for sure.
Is opening day with the rifle?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking with the rifle here.
Yeah.
So
I think it's the first Saturday in October usually.
And then when can you start hunting them with the bow?
August 15th.
Okay.
With this certain permit, if you draw the archery on.
I mean, and to that question, what you just asked about bow versus rifle, if you grew up as an archery hunter, then I'd say maybe an archery hunt is a fine first hunt.
Yeah.
But if you haven't, a rifle hunt is probably your best likelihood if you're in a state that allows it. Otherwise, maybe a shotgun or a muzzleloader. So, see, my mind doesn't go to these questions. I'm glad people ask them because I just blow over that stuff.
All right. So, do you want to talk about your top or your favorite hunting books?
My favorite hunting books.
Do you have some favorite hunting books?
We should have walked in. I should go in and do this in the bookshelf in the other room there.
Oh, yeah.
I can't say I have a favorite. I went through this phase where it was about consumption of facts and biology and ecology and everything about the animals I was hunting. And then it switched over to a little bit more of, I'll call it the soft sciences of, sociology and politics and how hunting fits in society. And then it became, right now, it's really heavy into conservation history and the history of native cultures and the history of other stuff. So do I have a favorite? That's a good question. If someone came and looked at my library, they'd see such a screwed up variation of.
maybe instead of favorite, like a few that are at the top of your list.
Yeah, I mean, some of the simple books to read that I think are effective is a friend of mine, Jim Posowitz, wrote these 3 books: Beyond Fair Chase, Inherit the Hunt, and Rifle in Hand. They're almost like little pocket guides. But they're written very well and tell compelling stories. So all 3 of Jim's books are sitting there in my bookshelf. The other ones that are there right now are related to conservation history, hunting in the American imagination, the Big Burn. What's the one about the bison and George Burt Grinnell? Gosh, I can't.
The Last Stand.
The Last Stand by Plunky. Is that his name?
Michael
Punky. Yeah, that one is that's probably the best book. That and the Big Burn are the 2 best books I've read in quite a while.
Yeah.
Steve Runella's book about
American
bison.
buffalo. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, that one's there.
That's a good one.
I've read a lot of Steve's stuff, and to me, that's his best work yet. That one's there. Jack Ward Thomas's book on elk and elk ecology. I still go back to that. Yoakum has a book. He's got 2 books on pronghorn. Research type manuals, just ridiculously thick. I read that a lot. So I don't know. It's
the old standard too. If you've never read it, a Sand County Almanac, you have to go read.
I can't believe I forgot that one. If you haven't read the Sand County Almanac, wow. Theodore Roosevelt's. I got all of his books.
His hunting stories.
Yeah, the ones about hunting tales of a ranch land hunter or whatever it was.
I can't remember it. Yeah.
So he's got a bunch of them. I've got those. So yeah, and then if you're into native history, and especially if you like the Northern Great Plains where we live here, James Willard Schultz, he was the guide for George Bird Grinnell. So James Willard Schultz moves out to Montana, marries a Blackfoot woman, and lives with the Blackfeet, and watches. He comes out at the whole time of the complete depletion of the buffalo herds and everything else, and watched this culture of the Blackfeet die as the buffalo died. Remarkable writing, one of those guys who can write like you're just there with him here, and it's all about these fighting other tribes and going getting the buffalo meat for the winter and trading, and it's just remarkable stuff. I've got all of his books, and then in his later books, it's kind of reflective about a lost culture, and the culture was lost because the wild animals that supported them was lost. And then he became the personal guide of George Bird Grinnell when Grinnell would come out here. So I don't know why back in the time you had to use both your first name, middle name, and last name, but James Willard Schultz.
Okay.
His stuff is really good. I read it a lot of times just because, even though I've read him many times, it just fascinates me how he wrote and the way he can tell the story. So,
what about you, Michael? Do you have any favorite books?
If it doesn't have pictures in it, I'm not reading it. So with that being said, I'm reading Steve Rinella's hunting, processing, I don't know.
Oh, they're one about the
Complete Guide to Butchering or something like that?
Yeah. I just started reading that, I think, a couple days after I moved out here.
Nice.
One of my roommates gave it to me. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, you can get that at meateater.com.
Yeah. And it's really nice because I'm new to this Western stuff, and it's kind of just like a guidebook to it.
Yeah. No, I thought when Giannis and Steve were telling me what they were going to do, I'm like, do you guys know how much work that is? And they're like, yeah, we're most of the way through it. It's been a lot of work. There's no way. I have a book contract, and the manuscript's about 2/3 of the way down. It's sitting on the floor in there. I signed the deal thing 1.5 years, 2 years ago, and you'd think I'd have it done by now. But fortunately, the publisher / editor is like, I kind of told them, I don't know if I'm going to have time to ever get to this. They're like, well, if you do, great. If not. And that book is all about the 5 seasons of elk hunting: early season, pre-rut, peak rut, post-rut, and late season, and a whole slew of ideas related to that. But since we started a YouTube channel with all that stuff in there, if you go to Randy Newberg Hunter on the YouTube, I mean, everything that was going to be in that book seems like it's now either a YouTube video or in the process of being a YouTube video. So it seems to have taken some of the shine off the idea of writing a book. So, oh well, I don't know if that answers the person's question, but that's the answer I'm going with today.
All right. So, here's a good question. Did you ever have a mullet?
Did I ever have a mullet?
A mullet, yeah.
No, but I had the worst hairdo in high school. I think everybody can look back at their high school yearbook and say, oh my God, what was I thinking? And there's a TV episode coming out this fall or this summer where a buddy of mine, Dick Ferguson, came to Montana last year and we hunted deer. And the editor said, you got any pictures of you and Dick together in high school? Well, I have one where it's our football team picture. And I looked at that and I'm like, oh, Randy, that is so atrocious, man. Oh, well, but it wasn't a mullet, no. We left that to the Canadians up on the other side of the border. So. Where the hell did that question come from? What are they going to ask next? What kind of underwear I wear?
I'm sure that was probably there. I don't think I put that on the sheet.
Oh, okay. Well, if it was my uncle, he'd say, I don't wear any underwear. He usually had a hole in his crotch, so you don't need to think too hard about how bad that was.
Well, we'll get to one that requires a little more thought. Okay. So what would be your ideal drawing system? I'm assuming they're thinking of like a tag drawing system.
If I was king in the West, and I'm not, so this is all hypothetical, it doesn't matter. And people will say, oh, you're saying this, Newberg, just because you've burned your points everywhere. I haven't burned my points everywhere. I've got lots of states where I have pushing 20 points for species. I would give up all those points to get rid of all the point systems. I think the point systems, now that they've been in place in some, 20, 25 years in some states, we can reflect that it's not solving the problem. I see a couple things wrong with it. And all the old gray hairs are going to be saying, oh, Newberg, you're blah, 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 whatever. When Montana came up with its point system, I was on the committee that the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks put together, about 20 of us to work on that committee in the late 90s. And since I'd been applying in all the western states, for whatever reason, someone said, hey, you should have this guy from Bozeman be on the committee. I was the youngest guy on that committee by, I bet you, 15 years, with the exception of maybe Chris. So there were two of us who were not gray hairs. And I'm gray hair now, so I can make fun of the gray-haired people. And at that time, I said, we should at least keep half of these tags out of the system as just random draw so that new hunters, young hunters have a chance. Oh my goodness. You would have swore that I suggested we convert to communism or something. To me, Idaho and New Mexico, and some will argue about the allocation of resident, non-resident. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying those two states, it's random draw. There's no point system. To me, those are the best systems out there. All these other elaborate schemes, preference points, bonus points, squaring points, loyalty points, hunter ed points, points for this, points for your grandma's hairdo, points for what car you drive, points for being a paper boy when you're a kid. That stuff drives me nuts. It complicates it. It makes it, and Pat out on Bowsite right now, bowsite.com, has a really good article about are you frustrated with the Western drawing system? And he kind of gets to just this ridiculousness of it. And so for me, I would go back to how it was, because what's more fair than everybody having the same chance every year? And I know some people say, well, I've been applying since Moby Dick was a minnow. I should have a better chance. You know what? Whatever. At the expense of excluding new hunters. So, guess what, guys? It's snowing out there. I just ran the dog out real quick. Folks, we had to pause the podcast because the dog's having an emergency here, but it is snowing like crazy.
Yeah, it hasn't really stopped for a long time.
I don't know what that's going to do to the bear hunting.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Oh, well.
Track them down.
There you go. There we go, Marcus. You're on to it now. We'll get on a hot track.
Yeah, on the dark timber.
All right. What's our next one?
So there's a question of what is an item in your pack that might be overlooked?
Item in my pack that is overlooked. A puffy coat might be one of them for late season hunts. It's so light. I have the Sitka makes a lot of stuff out of Primaloft. I think all of their Primaloft ones are their Kelvin series. I have a Kelvin light jacket that I bring everywhere, and it's amazing. Even while we've been bear hunting, it's been in the 60s, but you get up there, get sweated up, and the wind starts chucking. Putting that puffy coat on is pretty nice. What else is in my... Again, I take it for granted of what's in my pack, and I
one that you have that I know I have too is a second headlamp. It's crazy how often the second headlamp comes in handy.
Oh, for sure. And the people are like, well, why don't you just carry extra batteries? You know what? Seems like if I do that, the batteries got wet and they're corroded or whatever, or someone in the crew, their headlamp broke or whatever. So
or processing, and you can, tie one up in a tree and then also have one on your head.
Yeah. I would say that's probably a good one.
I think one of the things you guys carry that is pretty cool is those seat cushions.
Oh
yeah. That's something that I'm going to need to
for long periods of glassing.
Yeah.
Huh. See, it's you take it for granted. Once you build your system, your gear set, whatever you call it, you kind of take it for granted. Well, everybody's got a cushion to sit on. Well,
I don't know if that's something that everybody does, but
no. But when the ground is damp, it keeps your butt from getting wet. And you know how when your butt gets damp, then it itches the whole time, and it's just way more comfortable. I can sit there for a lot longer, and they weigh what? 2 ounces, 3 ounces.
You got that bigger one. I have the Thermarest little foldable one.
Oh, yeah.
I don't bring it all the time, but definitely if we're going to be glassing for long periods of time, it's pretty nice.
Yeah. What else do I have in my pack that is overlooked? I assume everybody has game bags. I assume everybody has a scalpel knife like the Gerber Vital that I use. I assume everybody has a first aid kit. I assume everybody has a compass as a backup and knows how to use it.
The bladder.
I doubt that for the younger generations, but
Really?
I would.
Because in my pack, in my kind of oh shit kit, the fertilizer hit the ventilator kit, I have a compass.
Okay.
I have a mirror for a reflector. I have, some...
Well, you have a compass on your phone now. Most of these smartphones just come standard with a compass.
Yeah, there you go. When those batteries are dead, that smartphone compass does you a lot of good.
Exactly.
But no, that probably another one is I carry as an emergency thing Aquamira droplets to
That's a good
filter
one, yeah.
water. I don't
I don't know if everybody packs those bladders in, those water bladders we use, but those are pretty nice. I mean,
I'm surprised how many people use water bottles. And you're going to hear this, folks. Here's the sound it makes in your pack when you have a half empty water bottle. I'm sitting here with a water bottle next to me. And you're walking in, I can hear that in somebody's pack where they drank half the bottle and it's sloshing around in there. It drives me nuts. Mm-hmm. I want to say, you know what? Squish that bottle down to get the air out of it or something. Oh well. But that's why we use bladders, so that they can freeze when it gets cold. Which, for those of you who hunt in cold weather and use a drinking tube to a bladder, you quickly learn to blow all the water back in, out of the tube, back into the bladder.
Yeah, and I think there's a certain temperature threshold where that starts to not matter anymore.
Yeah, that'll even fail you. But what else we got, Marcus?
Do we want to get into some slightly political questions?
I don't care. I'm an equal opportunity abuser. I did a write-in candidate for the election, so what do I care? I can criticize everybody.
Okay, so this one is, how can someone like me in Mississippi help with the fight against federal land transfer?
And we've covered that on quite a few podcasts, but I'll answer it again. Contact anybody you know who's a decision maker. 1, start with yourself, get educated. 2, your circle of family and friends, make sure they know what it is. People you work with, don't do anything that gets you fired. But then look around you and others. Who is your circle of people who you know who are elected officials or decision makers? And let them be informed. Because a lot of times it's not that a politician says, oh, I'm here to screw the public land user. It's that they don't know, so they call someone from the West, say it's a national issue, or someone who's supposedly an expert on it. And usually the experts are the ones who are paid to lobby to try to get rid of our public lands. So make sure your elected people know. If some big issue comes up, call the congressional switchboard. Google's your friend. Type in Congressional Switchboard, it's a 202 number, and it'll come up, and call there. They'll ask your zip code. They'll say, okay, here are your people. What message do you want? Well, I want them to know that I don't want them to sell or transfer public lands. It's join groups, Backcountry Hunters, Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partners, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Wild Sheep Foundation. A whole bunch of them have made pretty strong statements against that stuff, so joining those groups helps also. But be informed and be active.
It's a question you've answered a few times, I think. But
yeah.
Another one we probably touched on recently too, but I don't know if you want to talk about it again, the status of corner crossing in various states.
Yeah. Corner crossing is a very complicated one. Just because if you look at a checkerboard, you know how every other thing is black or red, and assume that the black is all private and the red is all public. Well, trying to corner hop, as they call it, like you would move checkers, in most states constitutes civil trespass, even if it's not decided whether it's criminal trespass. It's still probably most attorneys will tell you it's still civil trespass because you are stepping over or swinging over or crossing someone's airspace. And then I know listeners are like, well, how far up does airspace? Well, there's special rules related to aircraft and everything else. So don't try to equate aircraft to someone walking. The status of it is it's still very much undecided. I don't do it just because if it's civil trespass, even if it's, say it was not criminal trespass, I still wouldn't do it because it's civil trespass.
Okay. And then this question is, are there any non-hunting focus groups that hunters should look to for support on various habitat issues or access issues?
Wow, that's an interesting one. I end up working with a lot of groups through work I do. And again, this will be a little bit of a tilt of my hand about where I live and the groups that are big players where I live. Groups that I do a lot of work with, I'm very fond of, is the Trust for Public Lands and the Nature Conservancy. And instantly now I know some people are going to email me and say, TNC, the Nature Conservancy, doesn't allow hunting on all their lands. No, they don't. A lot of their lands in the West, though, they do allow hunting, and it might be regulated hunting. That's conserving that habitat that they do, these big blocks of habitat. There's spillover effects of that wildlife that lives on that habitat TNC protects. Also, those animals might migrate or cross or be available in other places for hunters. So those are two groups that are doing a lot for large landscape conservation. Non-hunting groups. Well, I'll have to think about that one. It just depends on the issue. And depends on the state. I mean, there's some groups that are very active in some states and not in others, or on certain topics and not others. But I think the general point that I'd like to leave that with is, and Mark Kenyon and I got into this on the Wired to Hunt podcast. I was on his podcast a couple of weeks ago, and the point of it is that, there's going to be times when there are other advocates for public lands or for access or for clean air, clean water, whatever, who may have a completely different outlook than we do on other topics. You just got to be able to sort out, you know what? Whoa, those other topics, yeah, we're probably going to oppose each other. But I'm not going to stay away from being involved and engaged because some other group is involved and engaged. It's crazy. There's this criticism. I can't believe that you're talking to those people. Well, guess what? They're for public access. They're for public lands. They're for clean water.
Yeah.
Why?
You don't have to agree on everything, right? But if you have some common goals, why not work towards them together?
Yeah, and just accept the fact that there's going to be things we don't agree on.
Yeah.
And I accept the risks that come with engaging with those people. And I get criticism about it. I get people, emailing, Newberg, you're damn blah, blah, blah. Whatever. Take a number, stand in line.
So following up on that one.
We're getting to the more controversial stuff. Marcus will have me fired.
This is the last one that'll have a political tint, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, so what would be the pros and cons of having non-consumptive users of public lands contribute financially, as do the hunters with kind of the excise taxes and license fees?
So hunters contribute to conservation through the Pittman-Robertson Act, passed in 1937. It's an 11% excise tax on guns and ammo and hunting and other hunting-specific gear. And then later came Dingell-Johnson, which is the same on fishing gear, and I think it even applies, if I remember right, to some degree to boats and to gasoline sold for boats. So those are two pools of money where the hunter angler groups say, hey, we've been paying the freight for a long time. And it's fact, absolutely true. And so because of that, I say we, I mean the hunters and anglers, we have a claim to the seats at the table of how conservation models work, how wildlife management works, stuff like that. Other groups now are saying, hey, we want seats at the table. Okay. You have two different schools of thoughts on this. You have some in our community of hunters and anglers who say, no, you aren't paying, you don't get a seat at the table. And then you have another school of thought of, okay, you can have a seat at the table, but start paying. Because the first group says, we'll just pay more. Well, we're already getting to where price and cost is an issue for supposedly recruitment and other stuff, do we want to have a bigger pool of vested citizens or a smaller pool, with the smaller pool each paying a per capita higher amount towards it? One thing that is always a struggle, and this is a history thing that ages me, but in 1998, there was a thing being passed around in Congress called Teaming with Wildlife, or Teaming for Wildlife. It was going to assess an excise tax on non-hunting and non-fishing gear, outdoor gear, tents, backpacks, binoculars, all the stuff that hikers, bird watchers, campers, all them use. And so that got rattled around in Congress for a long time. And it was going to be used to fund a whole bunch of stuff, mostly access and parks and trails and stuff like that. That industry got it killed, got that taken out of it. And it came out after that whole argument. It then became CARA, Conservation and Reinvestment Act. And rather than them pitch in and pay, they said, well, let's just use all the LWCF money for that. And so for some of us who were involved in that, it's still a little bit of a hard pill to swallow. You guys had your chance.
Yeah.
You guys could have ponied up and you ran away. Flip side of that is, and I did a podcast with Hal Herring and Andrew McKeon. Hal writes for Field and Stream, and Andrew's the editor of Outdoor Life. And we got on this topic, and I said, do you think in today's environment, if we were to go to the hunting community and we hadn't had an excise tax upon us, like Pittman Robertson, do you think we could convince Congress and our elected officials and hunters today to go from a 0 excise tax to an 11% excise tax? Or would hunters have the same response today that the non-hunting community had when they got the Teaming for Wildlife, CARA excise tax pulled out of the Conservation and Reinvestment Act?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, so the reality is that we pay way more than our fair share, and we deserve the seats at the table for paying that, but I don't know that model is going to stay there forever. And if it's not, are we going to give those seats at the table without requiring a financial investment by other parties? Or are we going to say, look, you guys pony up with an excise tax on your stuff that gets thrown in the pot? Yeah, we're willing to give up a few seats at the table here. So I don't know if that answers their question, but...
No, I think that was a good way to address it. So, if people are fast forwarding through the political things, we can have another.
There is so much junk going on in the political world right now. We don't need to dwell on it.
No, I mean, I think it's good though. We need to talk about it. Need to make it a popular thing in hunting.
Yeah.
In hunting discussions.
Yeah.
But
in getting back to the podcast I did with Mark Kenyon on Wired to Hunt, and we talked about this the other night, is I brought up the issues of hunters and anglers always wanting to lay claim to the mantle, to the baton, to the torch of being the original conservationists. And history is on our side that supports that. But right now, we're going through some crazy times where there's ideas that, these clean air, clean water standards are just way too crazy. They're out of hand. And I'm not going to say there aren't instances where, things need to be made better and more accountable. And everybody would agree that no system is perfect. But I worry that we're going to dismantle over time the institutions and the processes by which we recovered the Great Lakes. We've recovered our water systems to the fact that we take it for granted now. We, just over here, you get on I-90 outside of Bozeman here and head west 80-some miles, and one of the biggest super fun sites in the world is there, the Berkeley Pit in Butte, Montana. Killed the river for how long how many miles was that river dead due to industrial waste. Where you come from in Ohio, Michael, the Cuyahoga River started on fire in 1967.
Flamed up.
Is that where we want to go back to? So I think that we as hunters and anglers need to be completely apolitical when it comes to standards that are the basics of conservation. Productive lands, clean air, clean water. And if we stand silent and become apologists or accommodators or accomplices to that process happening, which it could happen over, years and years, all that could just be eroded and pulled away. I think we're gonna look almost like hypocrites in the eyes of the rest of society. For us to stand up and say we are the advocates, we carry the torch for conservation. But oh, by the way, if they want to pollute this river or pollute this lake or get the Great Lakes back to being a dumping pit or whatever, we're gonna have a hard time.
Yeah. Having
any credibility. And so I've been talking about that, and I get a lot of side-eye looks, and it's worrisome to me. I did not think that being an advocate for clean water or productive land would put me in the crosshairs of as many people as it does. It's very disappointing, and I don't know, maybe it's just those people who are upset are some of the more active and vocal, so I end up, it's a skewed data set. I don't know, but that's a tangent to what that question was. I can tell you this, that I'm never going to back down from advocating for productive lands, clean air, and clean water. Never. And if I get grief over that, then so be it. Just the way I look at it.
Yeah. No, I mean, if you are a hunter and you want to hunt these lands, I mean, it just makes sense. It's amazing how ironic some people act, and with being supposedly big hunters and then go watch the way that they talk about other issues. Like, hey, you realize that this is completely contradictory to the greater good, if you want to say it.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
So how old are you, Michael?
24.
24. Marcus, you're 27. Okay. I wonder if, because we're now reaching a point where a lot of voters, a lot of our society didn't live in the 1960s and early 70s, especially even before that, but I'm using my time frame. I remember in the 1970s, before unleaded gas became a requirement, you could go to a town, if you would have came to a town the size of Bozeman, there would have been smog. That's how dirty the air quality was.
Wow.
Then when they said, guess what? We're going to go to unleaded gas. We're going to go to catalytic converters. We're going to do all these other things for emissions. It cleaned up the air so remarkably. It's crazy. Same with water. I mean, you used to see raw sewage dumping into rivers. It's like, well, you just accepted that. You kind of plugged your nose as you drove by.
That's crazy.
Now, you see kids swimming in the creeks where that used to be the case. And so I wonder if so much has changed, so much good has happened, that a large portion of our society doesn't have the perspective of how screwed up it was for a while.
Yeah.
If you don't have anything to measure it by, is today such the norm that you take it for granted and you don't think it could ever?
I think very much so.
In your wildest dream, you could not imagine a river starting on fire.
Yeah.
In your wildest dream, you could not imagine a metropolitan city of 100,000 people dumping their raw sewage into one of the Great Lakes.
Yeah, it's bad. It's
crazy. That's how it used to be. And I'm not saying that the people today would accept that. But what I am saying is the people who are advocating for lower standards of our land quality, our air quality, or our water quality, those who are advocating for changing of that are not advocating to make it better. They're not advocating to make the land more productive or the air cleaner or the water cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting to be an old codger, but I don't really give a damn. It'll be over my dead body before I'll go back to the days of what it was when I was a kid. And if that puts me in some people's crosshairs, so be it. That's life. I do worry that we in the hunting community are not speaking up enough on it.
Yeah.
Just like I felt there were times when the hunting community was not speaking up on public lands enough. I think that has turned a lot in the hunting world in the last 3 to 4 years. But I would hate to see the hunting community stand silent or the fishing community stand silent when the absolute foundational pillars of what creates great wildlife, great fishing, great even non-game wildlife, those pillars are productive land, clean air, and clean water. And I could go on and on, but yeah. I think the point has been made.
Yeah, no, that was good. Do we want to jump into some other questions that are non-political? Or?
Sure, yeah. Let's not. We want to leave them with some smiles and some aspirations. If I look distracted, it's because today Idaho is supposed to be telling the world that Randy Newberg drew a moose tag, and it hasn't popped up yet, and I'm getting annoyed by the state of Idaho. But oh well.
Refreshing your feed on the
keep it
on
F5,
the
F5.
All right. Well, so following up with that, what state and species do you have a stupid amount of points for, and why haven't you cashed in, or what are you waiting for to cash in on your points?
Well, Arizona, Nevada, and Montana, I've got way up into the double digits of sheep points.
I you know what? I should have read the rest of the question. It says bighorn excluded.
Okay. Well, last year I burned 19 points for Colorado elk. And not because I had any great aspirations. I mean, you filmed and you helped pack that elk out, Marcus. It was a fun hunt.
Yeah.
And to me, it was, it was, if that was the only elk hunt I was ever going to have, I'd have been like, man, 19 points. Holy cow, that's a lot of points. But I've got this year, I'm going to have 20 points for pronghorn. After this year's draw, I'm going to have 20 points for pronghorn in Utah.
Wow.
Why? Because it's never fit my calendar, or it just back when I was building points, I'm like, this is a cool landscape out in this one spot. I really want to hunt it. I've driven by there so many times, and I just want to hunt it someday. Well, now I've got the points. I could draw it any year in Utah because half of the tags go to the guys with the most points. Well, I'm one of the non-resident knuckleheads who's got, I'm going to have 20 this year, I believe it is. So I've got that. Not by design. I've got maximum deer points in Wyoming, not because I wanted to, but just because it's never fit my calendar. I'm back to double-digit deer points in Arizona. Gosh, it's not a function of. My motto is dying with a lot of points is stupid, or getting out of the hunting world with a whole gunny sack full of points is stupid. In a perfect world, I'd never have more than 5 points for any species in any state. But with moose, goat, and sheep,
yeah, you can't really avoid it in those species.
Yeah, I mean, in Utah, I'm going to have, I think after this year, I'll have 20 bison points. So what do you do? I mean, nothing. It just happens that way. But for species like Colorado deer, I never see myself having more than 5 probably never more than 3 Colorado deer points. I don't see myself again ever having more than 4 or 5 Colorado elk points. I don't see myself ever having more than 3 Wyoming pronghorn points or elk points in Wyoming. And if deer was my big priority, if I was more of a deer hunter than I was a pronghorn or elk hunter, I would say the same thing about deer in Wyoming. Nevada is just a harder place. It just because of the limited amount of non-resident tags. Arizona, I never see myself having double-digit elk points in Arizona. I will always be burning those on a late season hunt. Always. And you can do that with less than about 8 points in most units. So I don't know. I'm not sure if that.
So are you going to burn any of those double-digit ones that you can burn soon?
Yeah, next year. I'm trying to make sure it fits my schedule to go and burn those pronghorn points in Utah. It's stupid to have 20 pronghorn points anywhere. And if one of these states would take my moose, goat, sheep points, bison points, hey, I'd give them to them. So I don't know, is that answering their question, but I think it does.
All right. Do you have a sentimental piece of gear?
Sentimental piece of gear. Yeah, I'm sure we all do. Right now, what's growing to be my sentimental piece, we were talking about it the other night on the mountain, is I have that Howa Alpine Mountain Rifle that was prototype number 1. I've had it now for, I think the Alpine Mountain Rifle came out in 2013. Well, I had a prototype before that we were working on. And that thing it's a 7mm 08, and it has shot so many animals, and it still is just absolute tack driver. So even though that's not very old, I bet you this rifle's 5 years old, because it's been through so much. And it's when you're invested in something, you kind of get a little more sentimental about it. Other than that, oh gosh, I can't think of anything that I'm real sentimental about. You guys got anything though?
I guess my 338 rifle, my grandpa gave it to me. That's probably the main reason, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, if it was something like that, a family heirloom, yeah, I've got my grandfather's 30 Remington, an old slide action. They were made in the 19-teens. I shot my first deer with it in Minnesota. So yeah, it would be that, but it's not something people are never going to see me walking around hunting with that. But it sounds like you hunt. I hunt. 338.
I hunt with it. So
yeah.
Other than that, though, I can't think of anything in particular.
I know guys who, family member or something. It's a knife, or it's a compass, or it's a whatever. Everyone's got a little bit of something like that, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I have a nice knife that I got when I was young, but it's the steel's so hard on it, I can't sharpen it for a damn, so I usually leave it at home.
Yeah. I think there's an old granola bar in my pack that I must be sentimental about, because it's been in there for about 14 years. But no, I can't say that I really have anything like that. I understand why people do. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't know how long we want to keep going.
I don't know how long we've been at it here.
An hour 40.
Oh, we'll do
seconds.
Another 10 minutes.
All right.
That'll be worth about one question for about 10 minutes, the way I carry on.
Okay. How do you determine where to place your camp in a backcountry hunting scenario?
As close to my needs as possible, and as far away from the elk or deer's needs as possible. But I know that's a generic answer, but I don't want to have to spend a lot of time looking for water. I've done backcountry camps in Wyoming where the wind blew so hard. I was like, "What? Whose stupid idea, Randy? Why did you camp in this godforsaken wind tunnel here?" So I'm looking for cover from wind. I don't want to be where there's lots of dead trees. I don't know. Have you ever laid there at night and heard the wind howling and you hear trees creaking? It's like, one of those dead and gonna fall on me in the middle of the night?
That's something to think about, realistically.
Yeah, so I usually want to be in a little bit of a protected, sheltered basin or little bowl or something where the wind is not going to be as bad. We're obviously not near any dead trees, and I want water nearby. Now, relative to where the animals are, if I think those animals are using that basin, or the animals need that water, or are traveling through there, I'm not camping there. I'd rather hike an extra mile or two to get to where they're at than to camp. I always hear this, well, I want to be right there with them. Well, usually if you're right there with them, within about a day or two, they're going to figure out you're right there with them, and they're going to be about 2 or 3 miles away anyhow, and you've displaced them. So
I've definitely done that on accident a few times. Get woke up with bugling elk right around your tent.
Yeah, and then you're like, oh, dang it, well, how stupid am I? I've done it too.
Then you can't sleep either.
Right. No, I've done it before. I've set up camps in stupid places and out of ignorance, not knowing that they were using that area or it was an area I was new to or something. So, but I don't know. We don't get to do as many back country camps anymore because we're trying to be so mobile as far as the digital communication side of it. We're always looking for places we can either fire up a generator or we can go to a hotel and poach some Wi-Fi from the local.
Charging batteries, all that stuff that goes along with filming.
Yeah, I mean,
we're going to have some opportunities this year, though, sounds like. So
yeah, we got Alaska Sitka blacktail. That's going to be as far off the grid as you can imagine. We got the elk tags in Wyoming, and then we've got the Arizona elk hunt. All of those are going to be backpack hunts. So that'll be interesting. It certainly for us creates a lot of challenges for all the extra production gear we got to carry, batteries, downloading footage. And I know a lot of people are like, what do you mean downloading footage? Well, we're burning through memory cards, and the last thing we can afford to have happen is a memory card loss or failure that's got a day of critical footage on it.
Yeah.
I'd be telling the story on TV, get to about to the 10-minute mark, and then just say, oh, we lost the memory card for this section. Just watch the blank screen for about 5 minutes, and we'll pick it up the next day.
Yeah.
So I don't know. A lot of guys like to be close. I get that. And I know some guys who tell me, oh, I push it pretty close. So as far as being in proximity to the animals, that's the beauty of antelope. You know, someday I'm going to convert this platform to nothing but antelope hunting. I'm like the spokesperson for everyone should be an antelope hunter. I don't think you can camp so close to antelope as to scare them off. You can throw your tent out anywhere out there in the prairie, and you aren't going to mess with those antelope. They'll move off a mile, and they'll be back. They'll come and look at your camp 2 days later. So,
we want to keep going?
Yeah, let's do a couple more.
All right.
That one was pretty easy.
So, what qualities do you look for in a hunting partner?
Boy, that's a tough one. They better be able to laugh. They better be able to put up with a guy who's not very good at anything. Sniveling is not allowed. I mean, I've thinned out sniveling guys. They usually get about a half a day, and then I fake some excuse about why we got to go home early. I don't know. It's mostly because now, at this point in my life, the friendships I have for hunting are very important to me. So it's got to be somebody who shares the perspective of hunting that I do. That if we sit here and we just glass elk all day and we don't shoot one of them, that's fine. If it's somebody who just has to fill a tag, or it's got to be bigger and bigger than the neighbors, or that's not gonna. They're not gonna be a fun hunt for me. I don't mind if other people want to hunt that way or have those reasons for doing it, but it's not my style. So I'd say it gets down mostly to style and perspectives and motives for hunting. So
I was going to say I would look for qualities of someone who has a lot of points for a species that I don't have.
Marcus will overlook a lot of things if he can party application with you. No, I'm also kind of, everyone, they talk about bucket list. I feel like I'm circling back around with a lot of people who I used to spend time with when I was younger, or family members that maybe we've not got to spend as much time as I'd like in the last decade or so. And so I'm getting to include some of those into my hunting also. Those times are more treasured than any time I can think of. So Last one. Let's try to make this the
Do we have
last
to
one.
make it a good one?
Maybe we should let Michael select.
Do you want to find a question? Did you
Sure,
remember
I'll
seeing-
find one.
Find a good one.
But
Find something
it can't
deep.
be something that's really taxing, Michael. I'm like at the end of my, well, some would say that I was at the end of my mental capacity before we even got the mics going here. But so
What is the maximum range that you feel comfortable shooting at a deer or an antelope?
with a bow or a rifle?
With a rifle.
With a rifle?
Yes.
I don't know. I'm
Given,
going to say it depends.
yeah.
Yeah.
Given just a conditions where it has no idea you're there. Calm.
Calm, no wind, everything is perfect.
Perfect.
I get to lay down and get in the prone position.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't like to put distances and numbers on it. I'll go by saying what's the furthest I've shot anything under perfect conditions. Too far. I mean, I lucked out, and I don't want to confuse luck with skill. I mean, one time I shot an antelope way further than I should have been shooting, and it just tipped over. But that now, knowing more and knowing better, my comfort range, because I shoot a lot under perfect conditions, is probably 400 yards. I have some of the best gear that's out there. I have some of the best ammo that's there. I get to shoot and practice a lot. But even at that, I don't want to. So I say, all right, there's my maximum range, but then there's also my preferred situation. If they're out there at 400 yards feeding, I'm going to try to get to 150. I don't know. Most of the antelope I shoot aren't that far away.
Yeah.
When you're practicing on the range, I know a lot of archers say, my effective range is double, or I practice double what my effective range is.
No,
so does that convert over to how you practice on the range with a rifle?
Yeah, it does in some respects. I will practice in terrible conditions. I'll practice in more what I call, and we're going to do a YouTube video on this, about shooting practice for hunting rather than bench shooting. A lot of guys go out there and they just sit at the bench, and it feels good to hear that gong out there at 500 yards every time you pull the trigger. Dong, dong. But how applicable is that? I've never been in a hunting situation where I've got to sit at a bench, read the wind meter, everything, know the exact distance to that target. With a rangefinder, you're really, really close. But when I'm out there practicing, I'm practicing offhand. I'm practicing kneeling, sitting, prone. I'm practicing when I've been exercising or exerting myself. And I'm always practicing at distances like those archers you talk about that are further than what I expect I would shoot at in the field. The old aim small, miss small theory. If I'm doing 500-yard shots out at the range under tough conditions, wind or rain or whatever it might be, and I'm doing it from a bipod, when all of a sudden that becomes a 200-yard shot and I'm prone, contrary to the bear that I missed on our YouTube channel the other day, that seems like a layup. And that's why I'm so mad at myself for missing that bear in Alaska. As much as I practice and as much as I try to replicate those shooting conditions, there was no wind. There was nothing other than me hurrying a shot. That, for someone who has my gear and my time to practice, that bear miss was a layup. It was a 2-inch putt. It was a, whatever term you want to use. It was an extra point kind of kick from, where it just, but, oh well. So I don't know if that fits for everybody. Some people are, and kind of going back to that, I've got some friends who are really good long range shooters, and they take it seriously and they take their hunting seriously. And they all tell me that under hunting conditions, they won't shoot at anything over 400 yards, even though they can sit there at 1,500 yards and knock steel consistently. they just have a different approach to it when it comes to an actual live animal that is not a target. It's a live animal. So I respect those guys a lot. And they've helped me a lot with my shooting, and they aren't out there shooting at animals. They could do it. If anybody could do it, some of those guys could do these 800, 900, 1,000 yard shots, but they don't. So, and I don't know, that could really get into a long, ugly mess. But I don't know, Marcus, you've lived in Montana all your life. You gotta.
No, I'm very similar. I mean, I think it definitely helps to practice out to further distances. I like to do that, but yeah, it makes it more fun to get close.
Yeah. To me,
I don't want to have to shoot that far.
No, and also the further away the animal is, the less confidence you have of where did I hit him, or
Yeah, if you're gonna get a follow up shot, and that's another pro, I guess, of practicing out to further distances in the occasion that you do wound something, being able to shoot at it. That's good. I mean, you hope that never happens, but that's something that you kind of have in the back pocket.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Marcus. And the same would apply to archery. Once you've hit that animal, you're doing everything you can to get that animal on the ground.
Yeah.
And I don't take for granted that bullet was a perfect placement. I think it is. But if that elk is still standing or walking, I am doing everything I can to get that elk on the ground. Or deer, or whatever it might be. So yeah, I've taken second shots at animals as follow-ups that were way beyond what I would ever do if it was just, why? Because I hit the animal, and yeah, he was going down, but I wanted him down sooner. For the sake of the animal and for the sake of just the ethics of recovering it and everything else. I know there's a lot of different theories on that, and anytime you open that can of worms, you get the old comment of, well, you're just jealous because you can't shoot like those guys. No, I'm not jealous that I can't shoot like those guys. I'll tell you that I can't shoot like those guys. I mean, I've watched some of them. It is impressive. But the really good ones don't shoot animals at those distances either. They know, they understand how fine of a line it is to try to consistently do that, and how controlled the variables need to be when they're on the bench or they're laying on their mat. They understand that that's not what you get when you're out in the field.
Yeah.
And so they scale it back. But if I ever had someone backing me up because an animal was getting away, I got about 4 or 5 guys. You be my backup here.
But that being said, there's people out there who shouldn't be shooting 200 yards.
Right.
I mean, realistically,
you
just need to know.
That's a good point, Marcus.
You need to know your skill level, and just realistically, you owe it to that animal to put it down in the most ethical way, the quickest possible. Yeah,
that is a very good point. I see people out at the range every year that you can tell they just pulled the old 30-06 out of the closet, and they're running 4 different brands of ammo of different weight grains through there, and she's on paper, that's good enough. They have no business shooting past about 40 yards.
Yeah.
I guess for the listener, the only reason I would shoot that far is because, for me, ammo is free. I get to use some of the best rifles and best optics out there. And I get, part of our job is to go out and do YouTube content that involves shooting for hunting conditions. So if it wasn't for all that, back before I started really shooting a lot, I would bet you I would have cut that in half. I think my effective range, anything over 200 yards, I started getting a little bit fidgety at. And that was just 20 years ago. So, but with that, folks, I hope that you'll go out to our YouTube channel, our Facebook channel, our Hunt Talk forum, Instagram, wherever, so that Marcus and Michael can sort out more of these questions.
Yeah, we didn't get through all of them, but keep them coming.
Yeah, we're always interested in what people want us to talk about or to film as content. today at our office, Marcus and Michael were filming a piece about, it was interesting to watch you guys talk about how you're going to film stuff, because you're directing each other now and you're editing your own stuff. So they were doing a piece about, we want to, and if you're listening to this and you want to chime in with some questions, we're trying to figure out where is that happy point or that intersection of cost and quality for filming your own hunts. Because a lot of people want to do that now.
Yep.
And so we decided that we're going to show the audience, here's what we use, but don't be lugging this big pile of junk around. You don't need all this stuff. You don't need to spend this much money. So it'll be interesting to see it kind of when we post that up on YouTube, what kind of feedback and comments we get, because I think you guys with your background and experience could go into hours of detail about filming and equipment and photography and gear. But I bet you a lot of people listening are like, yeah, I wish I knew, what should I have for a camera? You know, I'm going to film an archery hunt, or I'm going to film this hunt. We always read about on our Hunt Talk forum, hey, I've got a GoPro, I'm going to film my hunt. It's like, oh, God. I mean, but that's just because people don't know what it takes. And so if people want to leave feedback or ask questions, come out to our Hunt Talk forum or the YouTube page or whatever. Leave your comments. You can email. I'm going to get inundated by saying this, but my wife handles these emails, so don't send anything that is bad. But no, I'm not going to give that email.
Yeah, I was like, wait,
never mind.
She'll say, what are you doing, you knucklehead? And Facebook messages on my personal Facebook account, I don't respond to Facebook messages, so don't Facebook message me. I don't even have it turned on my phone, and I'll run into people. I've sent you 12 Facebook messages and you've never responded. You're right. I've got over 1,000 of them that I've never responded to. YouTube, yes. Hunt Talk Forum, yes. If you're able to somehow connive my email address, that my wife will sort those and I'll reply to those. But where else did you pluck those from? Instagram?
I think I might have got a couple off Instagram, but yeah, mostly YouTube, Hunt Talk, Facebook.
Yeah, because when you guys leave us comments like this, it generates a whole list of potential YouTube content for us. And before we hit the road in the next 3 months, we are going to be grinding out a lot of YouTube content. So if we ever get this bear killed...
Yeah, if the snow would stop falling.
Yeah, right now it is. I cannot see a half mile right now.
It's accumulating too.
Yeah, it's not like melting.
Snow.
And then, with this bear hunt, we're not going to Idaho until we kill a Montana bear. We've been telling everyone we're going to do the Rocky Mountain black bear trifecta. It looks like we might just get stuck on the Montana black bear solo.
Yeah.
But part of that is you are hanging out with the worst black bear hunter in the world, obviously. So people say, yeah, that's why you got to go to Alaska to kill a bear in Newberg. You can't kill one in Montana. But I've shot some in Montana. But how are we going to solve that? I mean, we were working our butts off.
Yeah.
We're hiking.
It'll happen. It'll happen. Just got to put the time in.
You think that'll work? Is bear hunting what you thought it would be, Michael?
I honestly had no idea anything about it, so it's fun. I like sitting up there and glassing.
Yeah,
it's a good time up there, and
get to see a lot of critters.
Yeah, that's what I've really been enjoying, is seeing all the critters up there.
Yeah. Well, hopefully when the next podcast rolls out, we can report that we are on to Idaho.
Yeah.
Because if we don't get that done pretty soon, it's creeping into walleye fishing period here. And I've already told you guys that with my wife, if we aren't walleye fishing 3 days a week in June, July, and parts of August, this whole operation is going down. And you guys will be looking for work elsewhere, and we don't want that. So
nope, we sure don't.
I would say we've got about another 4 or 5 days of bear hunting on the calendar, and if we don't get one, we're screwed.
All right. Well, we'll make it happen then.
All right.
Better make it happen.
So there you have it, folks. Next time you hear the Hunt Talk Radio podcast, you're either going to hear a story about a black bear that got killed in Montana, or you're going to hear a bunch of walleye fishing stories. Well, everybody, thanks for listening. Really appreciate all your support. Take care. 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 Take care.